Okay, we're live. See if the notifications push out. Right, there's one there. Got in that message. On chat again. No push notification to Discord. I think something broke when I added this like timed announcement. That's fine though. We can just manually test trigger. There we go. Cool. Alrighty, let's continue on with our pet the dog. Alright, continue on. So, first things first, I've done my farm run. I'm just gonna go get the other runes from Port Sarim, and then I'm going to get the food from Karamja. Why am I running to the bank? That's of no purpose. Port Sarim. Then we're gonna start our day. Yeah. Yesterday, broke my brain. Took me half an hour to figure out how to cut an onion. Turned it into chopped onion. Ryu Jagex. I still think the solution was dumb. I also forgot to come here, so let's just quickly grab the chocolate dust. Chocolates. Yeah, so today we're just gonna do something a little different. Instead of doing any quests, we're just gonna try out divination, archaeology, and perhaps maybe do some runespan. Check that out, because that was skyrocketing Ben and Jack's levels. Then later tonight we're gonna do some group dungeoneering. We've agreed to just do dungeoneering as a group, so that's gonna be fun. But I'll probably record that but not do it live. Just because of the timing and stuff like that. I've also got an appointment tomorrow, so I'm not going to be on tomorrow, I don't think. The appointment goes for quite a few hours and it finishes right when I'm about to start. So I may still go live, but I don't know. If not, I'll just post that video instead on the YouTube. Yeah, but we're gonna do this stuff today because I still have no fucking clue where this guild registry is for this stupid quest. Yep, no idea. I searched so many places yesterday. So many. And couldn't find it. So here we are. Last night off stream, I just basically, all I did was thieving and then like not even many farm runs. Just been doing the that chest again, the one with the herbs and the herb seeds up in the Castroid Tower. It's been good XP, it's been nice and chill. I did notice, I examined the Qualms and the Snapdragons, and the Snapdragons were worth fuck all, which is kind of alarming. Snapdragons are one of the most expensive in old school, because super restores are so damn good. But in this, it's not the case. So the Qualms are 4 times as expensive. So I have no idea what's going on there. That's pretty confusing to me. I know the protection pres are like 50% damage, which I don't personally like that, but I'm sure a lot of things are balanced around it. But yeah, the super restores being so cheap, I'm like almost concerned that the super restores are not even going to restore prayer. Well, that's where my mind's at. That would be horrific. Especially considering I've got like nearly 200 Snapdragon seeds. That being said, I don't mind because like red spider's eggs are easy as hell to get, so it's still just like good XP for me compared to like a lot of the other stuff. So that's fine. I didn't see what the other Snapdragon potion was, actually, come to think of it. There's Qualms. Why? Yeah, why Qualms? It's like obviously super strengths. For galley, cooking. Oh, Haralander and Swordfish. That's interesting, and that's very interesting. A luck potion. What the fuck is a luck potion? Fletchings, scentless, snapdragons, okay. Quam, weapon poison. That's fairly easy to make too. Super restores, yes. Super hunter, sandfew. Super. Yeah, these just go straight into. Okay, so I don't even. I have no idea. No idea. Bile, maybe that's why they're cheap. Because they only serve one purpose. Just go there. I don't know which is the best banking option. Actually, I'm going to try Berthorpe. Jack said he's going to Berthorpe. The bank. I know the bank chest is right there, but I wonder how close it is in comparison. Yeah, I think I'm going to try archaeology first. Divination just doesn't seem that interesting, to be honest. From what I understand from what Jack's learned is it's like mostly just boosts the other skills or like makes you get more rewards or whatever. And I think I quit around then, or I tried it a little bit, but then like I came back and tried it like the tiniest bit. I think I remember the training method was kind of boring too. But that's going off some very old knowledge. I also don't know where the divination. Wait, that's Slayer. I was about to say, I don't know where the divination trainer is either, whereas I know where the archaeology one is. So might as well start with that. I don't know the quickest way there, so I'm just going to go to Varrock and run. Probably a better way. Like a dig site teleport or something. I'm also doing this because I want to see the benefits of, what are they called? The pickpocketing the archaeologists. Like, I can see what resources they get, but the resources mean nothing to me. So hopefully doing this will kind of make me understand it a little more. Yeah, it also keeps on doing this every time I come here. I say every time I come here, I've been here twice. What the fuck is that? Serious monolith. Yeah, and I can't even use like that thing I tried when I was pickpocketing the guy there. Alright. Acting Guildmaster. Are you here to sign up with the Archaeology Guild? We've just received some serious funding and we're in need of as much help as we can get. Maybe. Why would I want to become an archaeologist? You want the sales pitch, right? Need a reason to get down in the dirt with the rest of us working schmoes? Well, I'm sure one of these 4 core aspects of archaeology will at least get you to give it a shot. Wealth, power, fame, stories. I mean, that's a little generic, but we'll go with it. Wealth is the easy one. Not only will you find artifacts with their own inherent value, we also have a healthy trade going on between guild members. Any materials you excavate, you can also sell to other archaeologists. Oh, why do I feel congested? Had a horrible sleep last night because of the weather. So hot. Power comes in the form of many magical relics you discover in your career. I have no doubt an adventurous source such as you would gain great value out of increasing your power. Sorry. Fame comes in the form of being the first to discover something of note or importance. There's more than one way to become a world-renowned archaeologist. It isn't all just about being the most experienced of us. And finally, the stories. As an archaeologist, you will uncover long-forgotten tales of people and places from the past. Events lost to time and rediscover things both mysterious and wonderful. Well, I'm sure at least one of those motivates me. I don't know, I wasn't very convinced. Do I need any qualifications? Those can come later. I'm sure we can start off on the basics and you can learn on the job. You know what motivation would have been better? It's fun to do. How's that sound? Make it fun. Great, so what are the basics? First off, you're going to need some tools. a set of archaeologist tools. You place them on your tool belt. Cool. Those tools I just handed you will uncover most of your needs. Oh, will cover most of your needs, uncovering excavations and restoring damaged artifacts mostly. However, we've been developing a new tool to do the actual excavation. Strong enough to dig out materials quickly, but delicate. Wait. Strong enough to dig out materials quickly, but delicate. Should it be delicately? Oh, no, it's fine. But when you need to be careful around an artifact, okay? Take this bronze mattock to start with. Is that what they're called? Add 2 tools. So she adds all the other stuff to the tool belt, but not this. Interesting. Probably because that one's like probably an upgradable one. Yeah, because it's bronze. Now, excavation is one of the 2 main aspects of archaeology. You'll find a number of excavation hotspots across the various dig sites. Excavation hotspots have many names. The first step is always to uncover. Uncover them. Like that Seniston soil over there. Is that what that is? Oh, Sentiston. Your main goal will be to slowly dig up an artifact from them, but while doing so, you'll obtain a number of other useful finds. We'll discuss the values of these as we go. The blue bar above your head will, while you excavate, shows you the progress towards discovering an damaged artifact. While excavating, you will find materials which are used to restore these damaged artifacts, okay? To start with, you'll need to uncover each new excavation hotspot that you find. Try it on the pile of Sentiston soil over there, just to the north, okay? Isn't this what you do with divination? You just run over to a fucking hotspot? I mean, I say that, but that's like a lot of the skills, right, I guess. Neat, I've uncovered an excavation. Now to start excavating it. Oh, I missed what it... I thought it was specific. I thought it was deliberately holding it there so I could read it. Like, examine? Oh, probably survey. That'll probably show me that. Centurion remains. Imperial iron, purple heart. Purple heart wood, Centurion dress sword. Okay. Yes, I found some soil. Huge. I got a bunch of this stuff. Like, I got ancient gravel from pickpocketing. Imperial iron, okay. Is this it, though? Oh, no, it looks like it's got some interactivity. Well, not even interactivity, it's just got some, like, things. Purple heartwood, okay. Oh, I see, there's these ones here as well. Material cache, 3rd age iron, okay. Crest sword, damage, okay. While excavating, you can make discoveries. These damaged artifacts you discover can be restored, but they require various materials. Left click, inspect. The materials required to restore the artifact are shown here. When you're ready, talk to acting guild master. Yep. I mean, that's quite cool. I don't know what it's going to give me in the end or what the fucking point of it is. Collections. Centurion dress sword. Reward the mortal cup. Okay. Hello. So I found some soil, materials, and a damaged artifact. Upon whoops. I accidentally clicked then. Well, one way to find more materials is to screen any soil you found while excavating. And you some more, okay. Head over to the screening station and screen that soil. Now, is this level locked? Because I can get the gravel very easily. I have my own method of archaeology and excavating people's pockets. Wait, what is it doing? Oh, it can turn... Okay, can turn into materials. Right, that should be enough screening. What did you find? Screening is a good way to find any materials you might have missed, among other things. The screening station will help you separate soil from any useful items hidden within it. Okay, that makes sense. So, now for the main aspect of archaeology, restoration. Damaged artifacts require a lot of materials to restore them back to pristine condition. To help, we have a material storage container that you can use to store any materials you discover. Oh, is there one here as well, or is it just up there? I guess it's up there. All damaged artifacts you discover while excavating can be inspected in order to see which materials you will need in order to restore that artifact and in what quantity. See if you can restore that damaged artifact you dug up. First, check out the material storage container, then make use of the nearby archaeologist's workbench to restore it, okay? Yep, so that is the only one here. Restore everything, deposit. Okay, artifacts can require large amounts. Yep. And I guess this takes it straight from there, I guess. Okay. I'm curious why I want the dress sword. Yep. What is the fucking point? On closer inspection, this is clearly just a replica, okay. For training, it makes sense to not trust fragile, age-old art in experienced hands. Still very good replica. Okay, well, what's the value? Oh, I've seen these while pickpocketing. Panning guide. Okay, so you can pan as well. Congratulations, you restored your first artifact. There are collectors out in the world who would love to get their hands on these artifacts. Volusia is a collector who can be found out front of the main building. She might be interested in adding that to her collection. You should go talk to her. Okay. It said it was worth 0, but cool. Wait, collect information notice board. Is this like the farm? Wait, is that a Centurion's dress sword? I'd love to add that to my collection. I'll trade you something valuable for it. I didn't even observe Mortal Cup. Okay, thanks for helping me. What the fuck is a Mortal Cup? Mortal Cup. There are many collectors in the world who are interested in artifacts. You can see a list of those that we're aware of on the notice board here. Okay. The museum is also interested in your discoveries and will reward you for your contribution. Okay. What the fuck is this? What is this thing? I can feel the power emanating from it and pulling me towards the strange monolith at the center of the campus. Okay. You need to complete the tutorial before you can interact with this. Okay, that doesn't make much sense. They're like, I should be able to interact with it when they tell me that it's a possibility and availability. And that guy just teleported there, so there is a teleport to here. If you're going to introduce something, you should make it interactable so they can at least, like, get the hands-on experience. Even in a limited capacity. Volusia handed me the relic in return for the artifact I gave her. It feels like it's drawing me towards the monolith. Really? Now that's unusual. We've been researching that mysterious monolith ever since Guildmaster Tony's disappearance. Uh-oh. He was messing with it when he disappeared. Everyone has been too wary to get close to it, though. But if that relic is pulling you towards it, I feel like this is a moment of, some of you may die, but that is a risk that I am willing to take. A whisk? Shut up. We should see if your connection with the mysterious monolith is any different. Be careful, though. This motherfucker is sacrificing me. He's gonna turn me into a freaking archaeologist. Fine. Okay, interact. Uh-oh. God damn it. Also, I like how this is just something someone gave me rather than it being the thing that they dig up. Oh, I didn't even log into my fucking regular. It's old school. Amazing, you weren't pulled inside the mine. That was a possibility. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's how Guildmaster Tony vanished. I probably should have been clearer about that part. My character should have deduced it. 1 second, I gotta move spots. There we go. We've made it off limits to the rest of the guild members, but there was something about how that relic drew you to it and how confident you are. Yeah, go and ask her. What was her name? Volusia. Where'd she get it from? I just had a feeling things would work out this time. And look, I wasn't wrong. How many interns have you been? Yeah, good question. Sorry, okay, don't judge me. We've been accident-free since Tony's disappearance. Anyway, let's see if you can tap into the monolith and access the power that relic contained. You have now access to the relic. Font of life. Increase maximum health by 500. Now we're talking. Whoa. Oh, I can have 3 relic? Okay, so I'm guessing this is like the capacity that might go up over time as well. And then I can... Yeah, it has to go up over time because some of these cost 250. Teleport spells from the magic spell book no longer require... Ooh! That's cool. So these are like leagues kind of modifier style things, but like obviously balanced. Relatively. Max adrenaline by 10%. This is cool. This is cool. You managed to access the power that relic contained. Here I was thinking I was recruiting just another intern today. I wasn't expecting you to go one better than our very own guildmaster. Yeah, it's a tutorial, so your guildmaster must have been pretty shit. I've only assumed the position of acting guildmaster because I believe Tony can and will return to us. That said, I feel you have the potential to climb up our ranks very quickly. You have a natural affinity with this stuff. Speaking of which, come and meet me in the main campus building just west of here to claim your first qualification. We need to get you working at the dig site pronto. Okay. Can I get teleport here? I mean, I definitely prefer the teleport here. Can I cheese this place and just like get XP really fast from like pickpocketing? Trade Maddie. What do you got? Oh, you just give straight up to Rune? That's kind of cheesy. Go on. Soil box. You must complete the tutorial. I think that's what Jack was telling me about with the pickpocketing, is you can use the soil box. I believe you have the potential to become a world-renowned archaeologist. You're a natural. More than that, you have a connection with the monolith out there. Something nobody else has. I bet there are many powerful relics you could sacrifice to it. And one of those relics may cook me. And again, why aren't you talking to her about it? She's the one who gave it to me. I didn't dig it up. Feel free to make use of the Guildmaster's office upstairs. We're all making use of it for now until Tony returns. Before you go, let me give you a quick tour of what's going on here in the office. This table contains a map of all archaeological dig sites. You may use this for fast travel. Oh, you may use it as a method of fast travel. Oh, that's cool. Madioc. I didn't even notice that. Those are all your basic mattocks to get you well on your way on your journey. When you get new qualifications, there'll be more available for you to purchase from Ezreal's shop. You belong in a museum. I remember Jack mentioning that. I didn't know they were actually called Ezreal. I think he said that, but I just didn't believe him, I guess. You'll need to get your hands on a bunch of crow notes. Oh, yeah, crow notes. Should you wish to purchase anything around here, though. I know I can pickpocket them. For now, they are stocking a soil box for free. I'd suggest picking one up, as it'll save you lots of space when out in the field. Okay. Go and grab yourself a soil box. You belong in a museum. Oh, you can get an assistant. Oh, no, this is the... Here you are. Okay. Reach precision. Archaeologist boots. Interesting. Material storage upgrades. Precision upgrade again. Additional relic loadout. What? Unlocks an additional loadout tab in the relic management. Interesting. Auto screener unlocks invention blueprint required to manufacture. Okay. Wait, what was this? What did this require again? Smithing, crafting, and divination. Okay. Oil box upgrade. Archaeologist. Yep. Okay. Oh, that's what we want. Big sites and collectors. Okay, that's what we want. 50 chrono notes. Chrono notes, sorry. Excellent. You can advance. You can upgrade your soil box capacity as you advance with qualifications. Now you have nearly everything you need to get out there and start excavating. The final thing is to give you this journal. Okay. All archaeologists have a journal to make notes on their travels, but it also has some other handy features. Checking in on your overall progress, what's in your material storage container, and getting you back to the guild quickly are just a couple of things you can do. Ooh, get me back to the guild quickly is what I want. Feel free to stick it in your pocket whilst you're out and about. You never know when it might come in handy. And without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome you as a new intern to the Archaeology Guild. Please accept this certificate of qualification. Okay. Journal, yes. Cool. Does this have a teleport? Teleport. Right now, you're an official guild member. You should get out there and start excavating. We've got a team over at Curidet that you could do with another, or that could do with another pair of hands. I'll get someone now to take you there now. What? Thanks for asking my permission. I'm gonna be back in a second. I need to blow my nose really badly. Okay, I am back. Dubby. God, there's nothing I hate more in the world than whatchamacallit, block noses. Actually, what did Mike get? Oh, he finished his Void Walker. Fuck yeah. Void Waker, sorry. Karasi, whatever. Same shit. Alrighty. Geogenesis, I'm over here. Hello, friend. Welcome to Curidet. Curidet Dig Site. We need your help to explore this fort to help answer some of Gillinor's oldest mysteries. Yes, this is the biggest casino that the world had ever seen. Your mystery is solved. Let me take you on a quick tour of what we have around here. Actually, that's kind of interesting. If you find any artifacts, feel free to use the workbench to fix them up. The material storage is free for you to use as well. Also, the dog just came into my room, jumped on my bed, and just died. It's too warm. What even is the weather today? Okay, it's 28 today, but it's so muggy. Yesterday it was like 37 and like 44 in Melbourne and stuff like that. It sucked. If you find any artifacts, feel free to use the workbench to fix them up. Material storage is free for you to use as well. Okay. We found this area to be rich in samite silk. There's no artifacts as far as we can tell, but it's rich in material. Okay. You have like specific ones that you can do just for I'm guessing like a higher rate of materials, but you're not going to get like the big item thing. I guess that makes sense, because if you're just doing in the ones that can get the big item thing, you could just get more items than materials constantly. Artifacts do seem to be abundant out here, though. You should be able to find plenty. We need to break down this debris to gain access to the port entrance. Then a key can be used to get inside. But first, you should read Tony's notes. Whoa.
The Zerosian Empire's very existence was once the greatest of archaeological mysteries for us to uncover. And we achieved that here at Centistan. And although the Empire was supposedly sprawling, it was so utterly destroyed that finding a near-intact fort buried beneath the sands is cause for celebration. The monolith has a strong connection with something buried deep beneath this fort, however. Was the monolith itself Zerosian? No, surely not. It's beyond ancient. There is only one way to find out what the connection is. We must dig deep at Caridet and discover what lies beneath.
I can tell you what lies beneath. A whole bunch of corpses that were just gambling addicts. That's all it was. Okay, is that it? Yes. I want to test this. Put in pocket. Bill, okay. Teleport. Okay. And then I want to have a look at the table teleport as well. Cool, so that is how we get here. Oh my god, I blew my nose and now my throat's congested. What the hell? Requires 5 archaeology. Okay. 90, 73, 42. Okay. So we're basically just stuck at these 3 for the most part. That's fine. Cool. Which one should I start with? I think we start at Carried X, because it sounds like this one has like an extra story to it as well. So maybe we might discover items that are for that story or something. Whereas the other place just seems like that's all it is. Alright. So we do this first because we don't have any artifacts to reveal or whatever. Oh, it does all of them. Okay. 5 requirement, 3rd giant. Okay. Let's open that again because I didn't get to read it. Zerosian insignia, Veneta dagger, and Veneta light. Okay. 1 XP. Is that? I guess it's 1 XP for a failure. Like if it's like the chest pick, like lock picking. And then when you succeed and it progresses, you might get more XP. Oh, it says it in chat too. Okay, that's handy. I was gonna say this lasts way too short. This has got a spinny thingy above it. Go to this one. Oh, you have started to focus on a time spirit. When excavating at a location contains damage artifact, a time sprite will position itself over the excavations in the area. By following this sprite, you can increase your focus, which will award. Okay. Crap, I didn't see it. What the fuck was that? 1 XP. I want to see what the XP is to succeed. Oh, that succeeded, but it didn't give me... Wait, it didn't... 7. Okay. Alright, let's have a look at the tools. Iron is at 10, okay. So we want to stay as high up on that as possible. Remember this one. Move it, motherfucker. 9. 3rd giant, okay. Virtue insignia, yep, this is all that stuff. I'm curious how much XP I get for this stuff, because like when I... Actually, where is that thingy here? Time sprite has moved. Where is the cleaning thing here? What the fuck is that? What are you doing over there? Climb up wall, okay. Where is this thing? The cactus patch. Huh. Okay. Flower basket rubble. What the fuck is that? Cultivate bush. Okay, yeah. This is where we get the material more. Oh, that's the sprite move. Yep. Okay. I wanna. Alright, we're gonna go check how long, like how much XP do I get for this gravel? Because I can pickpocket the gravel very easily, and that might just be way faster. What's this? Nothing. Can I not clean this shit here? Okay, that's kind of weird. Let's teleport. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see anything nearby. Alright, let's go to the cleaning thing. This just might be faster XP in general. Canning tray. Canning tray might just... Alright, what 1 XP each. That's not much better, but do we get more if it becomes an item? If it becomes an item, no, it's the same. Okay, so that's not going to be necessarily better XP. Okay, well, at least we tested it. This thing here, survey. Okay, so there can only be that one artifact. Survey. That's just materials. Okay. Are there other spots here? Or is that it? Dig, level 1 grid. Alright, that's more like dig site quest, I'm guessing. This all looks like it's dig site quest stuff. Not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed so far. Alright, let's just go back to the other place. Actually, no. We're gonna do one more of these swords. I want to see if doing this, like if you give it the second one, does it still like give you the reward and everything? I think I've excavated all I need for now. I should talk to... Never mind. It doesn't want me to. I also don't know why this is only here and not at the other place. It's all good. Alright, view. Alright, have a look. Yes, fast travel. I don't know if we need that to have the thing twice. Why have I got a friend request now? Hello. Neutral servers. Yep, you're not getting added. I don't interact in that server at all. It's the RuneLight server. Alright. Where's the sprite? Where's the sprite? There you are. So the one at the other place might be locked just because of there was a tutorial. Maybe we try and do do this twice. Alright, we're gonna zoom in. We're gonna get in the gamer position. We need to click immediately when it changes position. It is a focus after all. That is what we're doing. We are focusing. a noise. I hear the noise. Is it changing? Okay, so we see a full-on travel animation. Cool. This bar takes a while to level up. Oh, it's making the noise again. Are you gonna move? Where are you going? Huh? I'm gonna stalk you up. Never mind, the other game. Wood cutting. I think I was 2/3 of the way through 95 to 96. Alright. Level 7. Not gonna lie, this is boring as shit. Like, it's not very interactive or anything, like. Like, obviously it just started, so there's probably more methods and stuff later on, but not a great start. Okay. Oh, is this the sprite focus? 10% increase in archaeology XP, bonus 40%, a further 10% increase, and a 10% increase to your thing. Oh, it's going up now. Okay. Oh, I get it. So the more you're on the sprite thing, this goes up, and then depending on what percentage you're at or above, it will give you that bonus. And when you're not on the sprite one, it'll go down. Okay, so I'm almost at 100, so I'll get guaranteed material. That's probably what this green part is. Yes. Oh, it just Oh, okay. For a single action. Oh. Okay. That's lame. That's like every time you get to 60%. I mean, sorry, you get to 100%. Well, yeah, I guess it's every 60% if you're consistent. Every 60%, you just are guaranteed something. Whoop-de-doo. I will say the rewards do seem cool though. I will give it that. Whatever this is, better be fucking good. I mean, I'm also using the Bronze-matic, so it's probably just significantly slower. This is very underwhelming. I suppose the next question is how many chronotes is this item going to be worth? Like, was it worth this time? Venator dagger, okay. Inspect it. 16 third age irons, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I'm gonna go dump this. I don't know what I have in the thingy already. But I can also, I could go over there, but I think it's better off to stay here, just because there's also another Venator item instead. Restore. Did I have enough for it? No. Okay, so it can count what's in the material storage thing. Okay. And I'm pretty sure they said there was a Venator bow as well. Yeah, light crossbow. Might as well stay here. What did I say I had? I had 12, right? 13. 14. We'll go to 17 just in case. I mean, Ancient Gravel will probably reveal some, but I need to get this bar up again apparently anyway. Yeah, I really don't know how I feel about this right now. This is, kind of boring. I mean... And then again, to be fair, a lot of skills are at the start. It's just like... I would expect, like, a skill, like a modern skill to be... Especially, like, if this was old school, I'd be criticizing the shit out of it. Because, like, I expect the skill to be more interesting than like woodcutting or fishing, like some old skills. No, not fishing. Fishing has a bunch of different interesting things to it. They're like more than just woodcutting. Like this is just like clicking on a tree. It's like this combined woodcutting and fletching. Energy gathering and processing. Like, I think I expect more from it, even this early on. Which may be unfair, but I don't know. Alright, we'll get one more. I think I've got enough, but we'll get one more anyway, just in case. Oh my god. I'm accidentally clicking. I mean, I suppose to also be fair, it could just be that because I'm like streaming this or recording it or whatever, it's just less entertaining for that because it's such an AFK skill. But AFK skills do have their place in the game 100%, like it's a big part of the game. Let's go. So, perhaps I'm just not in the right mindset or situation to be enjoying it right now. But maybe I would enjoy it more like off stream or whatever. When I just want to kick back. Which makes sense, but again, like, there's a bunch of skills that already exist for that. Inspect, 206. Collectors, museums, version. Deal of the prefecture. Okay, that's Varrock. Archaeology. Oh, the rewards. Oh, so you can give it to different people. Diplomacy, relic power. That's another thing. How do I check the relic powers? Right? Like... How did I check the relic powers? Alright, let's go get the Iron Matic either way. Collect a restoration log, collect information. Maybe it's in there somewhere. Was there a thing in here that did it? Maybe when I talk to Israel? No, I don't think that would be it. Alright, buy that. Add to tool belt. Oh, it just adds them both to it. Okay. Check qualification. Maybe it's this. Nope. No. Oh, maybe upstairs. He did say you can use upstairs a lot. What's upstairs? Nothing. Oh, wait. Study desk. Okay, let's have a look. Any tomes to restore. Interesting. Display case. Ancient casket. Lovely. It's empty. Okay. Everything belongs in a museum. Cables. Archaeology. No. You're gonna give me chronotes. I'm just gonna do you for now. Whoa. That's too much. Contribute all. Alright, chronotes. Add to currency pouch. Okay, I've added to the currency pouch, but also I still have no idea how to use this shit. I think I saw something about it being with invention, but favorite this. Didn't you say the reward was 2,000? Did I just get scammed? Oh, it's when you complete all 9 you get that. Oh, this is just another disappointment. It's just a disappointment. The skill is just a disappointment. The thing is just a disappointment. Let me grab that shit out of my bank and we'll clean it at least. Draw all that. Move, withdraw that. White or third age iron. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Was this part of it? Samite silk? Soapstone? This is stuff I pickpocketed, I think. I guess that's it. I don't know if these were part of it or not. That's fine though. Add that to the thing. Deposit all. Alright, now we come over here, we empty this. We screen it all. Oh, what's the difference between screen mesh, screen? Okay, I guess they're the same thing, maybe? Don't know. 90 seconds for a whole... Oh no, it might be doing what's in my thingy as well. Alright, that's not as bad. But what XP each is... kind of a babe. Is this stuff tradable? Oh, not drop. Examine. Okay, it's tradable. That might be why it's 1 XP. I mean, you could have just not made it tradable. Too hot, isn't it, Bubby? Oh my god, this is taking forever. Now, while I'm waiting, I'm gonna go and make sure the dog's water's topped up. Because it is hot. Okay, I'm back. Alright, I think that's enough disappointment for one day. Well, I shouldn't say that, because we're going to go to divination next. That could always be disappointing. We're going to find the divination tutor. I think I saw... Was it in Lumbridge? Where the fuck is Lumbridge? I know there's that. That's level 1. Yeah, there we go. That motherfucker pickpocketing at me. Alright, let's go to Lumbridge. Yep. That's interesting, right? So, the first thought is like, there's probably some people who play RuneScape 3 thinking that archaeology gets better later on or whatever. But it is one of those things. I remember like Josh Strife Hayes talked about this when it came to just MMOs in general. People would say you need to play at least 100 hours before it gets good. And it's like, that is a terrible mindset because it's like people quit before then, right? And it's the same with archaeology. Like my current instinct right now is I don't want to do archaeology because it just was such a boring experience. So it's like, on one hand, it may get better later on, but I think it's a very boring introduction to it. All right, what's going on here? So glad you asked.
So glad you
Professor
asked.
Trelawney.
I'm Orna Fairweather, and these are my colleagues. We're pioneers researching the art of divination.
Divination? You mean like reading tea leaves, casting bones, that sort of things?
Oh no, this is much larger. Here, we are dealing with the energy of the world. The fate of Gillinor may be determined by our actions.
Arrogant much? Wow, that does sound interesting.
Oh yes, it's early days, but we've had exciting results already.
Can I start training divination myself?
Of course. We could use all the help we can get. The first step is to gather a memory. The wisps to the south will do. See how you get on and come back to me if you need help.
I suppose that's another thing to, like, you can comment on, I guess. Is like, she says, like, first step is to gather a memory. And to me, the first thing that makes me think of is that's pretty cool. Like, I like that concept. So I guess when it comes to archaeology, that could just also be the same for other people. Like, I know, like, someone in my chat, she loves archaeology, like archaeology stuff in general. So maybe that, like, that kind of, oh shit, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually digging and doing archaeology and stuff sounds really cool to her. but maybe not as appealing to me. Whereas like gathering a memory, I don't know if it's just because it's some kind of like, I don't know, abstract, convoluted thing that it just, I don't know, sounds cool to me. So that's also part of it, I guess. And I guess in that regard, I can only really, what the fuck is configure? To use the crater, you will need some memories. These can be gathered from the, oh, okay. This is also 1 XP, okay. Oh, gather a memory of any tier. What the hell is... Oh, okay. So like you can obviously like comment on the gameplay, but I suppose at the end of the day there is also the fantasy aspect of it, as well as like the immersion aspect of it, which is going to vary from player to player depending on what they're interested in. Same reason I guess I've gone for magic over like melee or range. But I don't know, I do think you should still always strive for making whatever it is as engaging as possible. Or at least have the option for it to be engaging. Look, I think that's one of the things that the Jagex, the old school team at least, I don't know the RuneScape 3 team that well, but the old school team definitely understands well, is that different players want to play the game differently, which means like when they release sailing, there's very AFK methods, there's very active methods, there's a bunch in between, all that type of stuff. And I believe that the sailing kind of introduces that pretty early on pretty well. So like that you have that option. Whereas in this particular case with archaeology, it felt very much like my only choice is like this AFK stuff. There is no like faster method, which is obviously most likely not true, but that's what was introduced to me through the gameplay. What did I even just... Is that it? What's weave? What do I do there? Whoa, 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 whoa. Alright. Wait, should I just capture one of these things and then go to her? I forgot. I think that's what she asked me to do. To get a memory. Right? Alright, let's do this. Now we got a memory. Teleport memory strand.
At this rate, you'll surpass my knowledge in no time. Are you ready to continue learning?
I'm level 2, so that's very alarming if you're the one teaching me and you... Not much better. Yes, please.
As you've seen, memories can be converted into experience, but that's not all they can be used for. If you focus your mind, you can also receive divine energy, a useful material. Why don't you try it?
Divine energy. Is that what she's talking about with these? No. Oh, copper. What? Okay, wait, what?
At this rate, you'll surpass my knowledge in no...
Like, what did she say?
As you've seen, memories can be converted into experience. If you focus your mind, you can also receive divine energy, a useful material. What?
Is that the pale energy? Divine energy. Fine. So what's the configuration thing? What's this? Whoa. Will now convert memories into energy. Convert into XP. Oh, convert memories and into XP. Okay. Wait, and keep energy. Convert memories and energy into XP. And keep energy. Was that it?
No time to waste. Are you ready to continue?
I guess.
If you spare divine energy, you can use it to your advantage. Just focus your mind on enhanced experience, and you'll get more return from your memories.
Okay. Yeah, that is what... okay, this is what she's talking about. Now I configure this. Nah. I don't know if this is that intuitive for a newer player, but because like my instinct as like somebody who's played RuneScape for 20 years is like right click things. But it's not that egregious. This is fine.
No time to waste. Are you ready? If you've spare divine energy, you can use it to your advantage. Just focus your mind on enhanced experience and...
Isn't that what I just did? Configure. Oh, and energy into XP. Okay. Yeah, I clicked the wrong one.
You seem to be up to date with my discoveries. However, Faizan is making breakthroughs with divine energy. You should speak to him.
Ah, excellent. A new volunteer. You're already on your way, but I have plenty to share with you. Shall we get started?
Yes,
First,
please.
we will learn how to make portents. These varied items can be held in your inventory for different effects. Why don't you try and make one?
Ow. Ow. You didn't is these the portents? Okay, these are the portents. I'm like, you didn't... Do I just have to go and grab something for this? Like, is that what you're telling me? Hail energy. Okay, yeah, that just goes... Yeah, I think that just goes up the list in terms of like the materials or whatever. That maybe that last one. Maybe I just go and grab a shrimp or something. Fair enough. I don't think that wasn't particularly well explained, but that's all good. I have shrimp, right? Yeah, I didn't even say if it. Yeah, I didn't even say if it wanted raw or cooked. I think it needs cooked. Yeah, it needs cooked shrimp. All right. Oh my god, is it all the way up there? Unless there's the fire here, but I doubt it because it's that building for whatever reason. Unless that building is the one I need for the other quest. I doubt it. Oh, fuck me, that's a pottery oven. That's farming. There's seriously no one in all of Draenor cook. Y'all suck. Alright, let's just chop down a tree and make a fire. Oh, that's the... I don't think that's the registry guild. Or the guild registry or whatever. Okay. Light logs. Oh. Damn it. Okay, we're good. Oh, I need more pale energy. Cool. That's fine. Pale energy. Which... Did I convert it or did I get it from this? I got it from harvesting, right? Yeah, I got it from harvesting. Cool. Whee! Okay. To continue divination achievements. Alright, whatever. Let's talk to him at least. Maybe...
I'm afraid my lessons are slightly too advanced.
Okay. Alright. No worries. Alright, configure this. Is automatically consumed when you are damaged to under half your life points. Oh, interesting. Alright, so this is the one Oh, we convert them both in energy. That's what we want. Cool. I mean, into XP. Alright, let's go.
I have much more to show you. Would you like to continue with my lesson?
Yes.
You've made a portent, so it's time for something more advanced. Why not try your hand at a divine location?
Okay. Bruh, you gotta at least tell me what they are. Is it one of these things?
I have much more to...
Hi there. If you're...
Welcome. You have...
I don't know if this is a budget thing or what, but this seems lazy at this point. Like, you can't even tell me that... Like, I'd rather there not be voice acted and them actually give the information. Like, he's like, you should do this, but then doesn't tell you how to do it. That doesn't make any sense.
Are you here to help? I catalogue the discoveries here. While the others are focusing on the practical applications of divination, I have chosen to investigate the history. I'd be happy to share
That's
my
cool.
knowledge with you, but I think you need a bit more experience first.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
I have much more to... You've made a portent, so it's time for something more
Right-handed
advanced.
divine location. What is a memory strand? What does this teleport me to? Oh shit. What did I do? Where did it teleport me to? Wait. Where the fuck am I? Oh. Okay. All the memories. Did that not consume one? I thought I had 18. Oh, it didn't consume it. Okay. That's cool. Alright, let's go back. Because probably have to go to a bank on the way anyway to see if we can get... Do I even have 10 shrimp? Or, well, no, we'll check what it actually wants me to get. Because it said, I think it said 10 crayfish or 10 tin and copper. Alright, 20 crayfish, okay, or... Yeah, okay. Alright, I don't have either of those. Shit. Alright, let's go to the bank anyway. Let's add this to the currency pouch. I'll forget about it later, but that's alright. We're gonna check the Port Sarim shop, see if they just sell the crayfish. We don't need those. I'll keep that on me. I don't think I need it though. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't even know if this is what I'm meant to be doing. Like, is this what they mean by the divine locations? Wait, maybe I checked the thing. Divine location. Okay, these are divine locations. I don't know why they're called a location. Maybe because it's for the hotspot kind of things. Maybe. Like you go to a crayfishing hotspot and it boosts that. Or the mining hotspots. I guess in that regard it could be a location. Again, it needs to be better explained. Okay, yeah, sell it. Cool. Crayfish cage. I don't even know if I have this yet. Ah, got that already, cool. Where the fuck do I get a crayfish? And yeah, I'm guessing here, because this is a... No. Crayfish, there we go. Right. Let's try that. 20. Actually, I'm thinking maybe I do these first because they're going to fill up my inventory, actually. Yeah. Because if I do this first, this is going to fill up my inventory and I can, as it goes, and I'll have to stop, convert it, stop, convert it. Whereas if I get the 20 or 30 of these, what was it? Crayfish? Oh, it's only 5 for these. Okay, that's easy. But yeah, if I get the 5 of these, I can convert these or whatever. get them out of my inventory, and then go and get the crayfish. And because I'm lazy, we are going to grab the Lumbridge teleport runes. No, not 5, 1, 1. I think, unless it's still 3 in this. Okay, it is 3. Cool. So, I want to configure this again. I have no idea what Empower is. We want to configure this again. It's this, right? You will now convert memories. Yes, and we'll keep the energy. Cool. That's what we want. Now we harvest this to have 5 of the weaving stuff. Okay, so you get 1 of each every type of the... Or whenever... Yeah, so whenever you get either, you get the other as well. Alright, dump this. Teleport to Lumbridge. We go fishing. Which side of the river are we on? At this side. Cage fishing. Hi, ducky! Cage, cool. We need 20 of these. Move that to there. Everything before that. That'll be 20. 4, 8, 12. Yep, 20. Cool. Almost sick from this weather. I'm gonna put my water bottle in the freezer. Alrighty. I thought of doing something else as well, but I forgot what it was. That is all good. Alright, weave this. Level 6 to continue. Okay. Place. Alright. I'm gonna drop those. I guess we go back. Ben's online. Maybe I do a short stream today because I don't feel too good because of this heat. And then I'll do the dungeoneering recording with him and Jack when they're both on. I'm gonna do this. Actually, before I forget, let's configure this to be both. You've gathered from one. Okay. Is that just for that one bubble, or is that? It also doesn't actually say what it does at the time. There we go. Place this to Fish, crayfish. Others may use your bubble. I never chance it. Give you additional node fish fishing. Can you place this anywhere? Is that what that is? But it says today, so I don't know if that's like limited to just this bubble or if it's to like I can only do one crayfish bubble per day up to 57 items, or I can only do 57 items total for that day. Not sure. So I'm curious, when I convert this, because I'm doing both the energy and the memories, does it do them both at once, or does it do them one at a time, like one of each of the memories, then one of each of the pale energy? Oh, I see, it boosts. Whoa. 5 of them. Interesting. What's the benefit? It just seemed to give 3 for each thing, didn't it? Did I miss it? Did it give more than 3? Let me check again. I'm gonna get 5. I might have just missed it. Ah, was it 3? It was 4. That doesn't seem worth it. Because those are the things that I'm using to make the other stuff. Yeah, that doesn't seem very worth it at all. What the fuck, Drunken Dwarf? Let me keep the energy. I mean, it might be more worth it with like the higher tiers. It might just be because this is such low XP to begin with anyway, that these aren't worth much. You know, if like something gave like 100 later and then they're worth like 10 each time or something, then that's worth a bit more than 1 each time. I doubt it'll, I don't know if it'll scale with that, but we shall see. Interesting, because like from a gameplay point of view, this doesn't feel that like engaging like archaeology, but at the same time, I think just from a visual standpoint, these moving around, which is technically a gameplay thing because you have to move your mouse more to click on the next one. I think the visual of it moving around more even just helps stimulate, at least me, than the archaeology where it's just a little patch in the ground with the swirl above it. I don't know, I'm curious to know what people think about archaeology as a skill, especially early. Don't harvest, don't harvest, don't harvest, just convert. But again, I could just be more, I guess, forgiving on this skill just because I think it's cooler, which is entirely a personal preference thing. Divination. The onions destroyed my will to quest ever again. That quest drove me insane. Alright, delete that. We tried it. Not that interesting. No, that's just another layer to set onion. We'll be finding a few more layers. Your mum. You're probably listening right now, so your mum. How's that sound? Fuck, although in this weather I wish I could peel more layers off. So hot! Sticky. You onion, yeah. Fuck you. How's that sound? Fuck you, buddy. Fuck you, guy. When, not in this weather, when it's cooler, where? Let's go with Catherby Bank. I like that place. I'm gonna grab a drink while this is happening. I have aircon. We'll be fine. I'm on my way. Imagine that. I'll bring the dog.
Welcome.
And we'll
Are you a volunteer?
You are proving to be an excellent
I'll bring the
keeper.
dog and see how it interacts with
Would
yours.
you like to learn more?
Yes, please.
Well, the next logical step seems to be to learn about signs. These useful little items can be worn in your pocket slot for various effects. Make one and see what benefit.
Okay, how do I make the signs then? Is that a sign? Break the memento? Ah, sign. Sapphire necklace. I've got them. Thank you, pickpocketing. Bruh, thieving is just such a good skill. It's so diverse. It has everything. If I need something, steal it. That simple. Sapphire necklace. Let's fucking go. What does it even do? When equipped, will transport up to 5 received items to the bank before depleting. What items? Pick items. What? I mean, we're gonna wear it because fuck archaeology for now. Alright, I need 4 more levels. Alright. I'm also gonna be back. I've got to shove my head under a cold tap. I'm dying. Okay, I'm back. Let's do another one. I am kind of curious about, like, what causes the bars to start higher or lower. Don't have any inventory space, no worries. Easy. I'm gonna have another one. I gotta go. I put an ice pack in my pillow last night because it was so hot. I just chuck that back in the freezer. Alright. 7. Divine Tree. I did hear about those. I saw something about that. This is they place to shop logs. This was at the Artie farm, right? What are you looking at? Dick? I swear the dog just ran into my room and now I can't see them. They vanished. They did a magic trick. Is this not a random event? Is he just like chilling here? Huh? No, harvest that. Alright, so we need 10. What even is it 10? Why do we want 10? Flickering Wisp, Divine Iron Rock, Boon of Flickering Energy. It's probably the boons, I guess. I'll say, like, overall I have been enjoying this. Trying out RuneScape 3. It's different. So far the only thing I haven't really enjoyed is the combat. That's the main thing. You know, I've said a few times I didn't like the start of Agility. I think they missed some stuff in that. That was kind of weird. But other than that, a lot of it's been really, really cool. It's been pretty good. The quests have been great when they aren't breaking my brain. Nah, actually, that makes it more fun when they're breaking your brain. The voice acting is very nice. It's very good for... It makes it, like, makes me want to do those quests. So that's really good, too. Hey. I've heard of what invention is. I don't really know that much about it, but from what I understand, I guess probably a good thing for the game. Like it repurposes a lot of older stuff from what I understand. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I'm just having fun. It is enjoyable. There have been numerous times where I've forgotten to actually do my old school woodcutting because of it, which I'm about 80% of the way to 96 now. Let's go. Like, I do still need to very much, like, do proper combat, not just, like, grinding. Like, I need to do some boss content to get a real feel for this and, you know, try without the revolution combat, like, doing it myself as well. Because I need to figure out if it's just in this awkward spot between, like, a less fluid, like, World of Warcraft or Arcade is my favorite, like, tab target MMO. With like this kind of stuff, or like, is it just a less fluid version of that, or is it its own thing? Because I think that'd be the thing that would hurt my longevity in this game. Would be whether or not I find the combat engaging when it comes to bossing. There does seem to be some cool stuff, that's for sure. Like, obviously, like, there's a few different things that, like, root things in place. Like, I guess this does stuns and binds. I'm sure that has an interesting place. This teleport is kind of cool. I think that'd be sick. I think it'd be overpowered in RuneScape, be like old school, but it's just a cool concept. And then there's other things like, that aren't on this bar, like I saw in, I don't know where the defense page is, but in the defense page and the health page, the defense one, there's like deflect. So like, well, not deflect. I think there is a deflect, but there's also another one as well. Focus your mind, reduce all damage taken by 10%, immune to stuns. So the immune to stuns thing could be very like a good reactionary thing. I love the idea of having a taunt. In old school, I was the one that would, like, when we did bandos on the gims and stuff like that, I'd be the tank. So that'd be cool. Can I do this at the same time as look at these? Let's go melee, range, defense. Oh, there we go. It opened it up. Put that there. Siphon strength from the target. Okay. Encourages the target to attack you. Okay, that'll be cool. Oh, it's toggleable. Freedom. Yeah, like this type of thing's cool where it's like you can use it reactively to things. I could have sworn there was also one where like you take like significantly less damage, but it's a very short like duration. Like, I think things like that are really cool. I think that type of thing is definitely beneficial in games like this, where it feels like more reactive combat. But again, I don't know what this will actually be like here. So we're almost done. I can quit rambling. Yeah. Other than that, been enjoying it. I'm curious about why. There are some things I'm just like curious about too. Like, why is Snapdragon so cheap? I don't understand that because they're one of the best herbs in old school. And in this, a qualm is 5 times the price. Like, what is the go with that? Is it because like super restores suck or something like that? Or is it because there's just so many Snapdragons and Snapdragon seeds flooded into the game through drop tables or something? You know, it could be either one of those, but I don't know yet. I haven't looked at like, I know RuneScape 3, because they've been like working on, they want to basically kind of do like an overhaul of a lot of the game in terms of like they're getting rid of the microtransactions, or they already have, or the toxic ones at the very least, and the pay to win ones. And I think Jack said that they're going to be doing like an early game rework of some stuff. So maybe some of the stuff I'm complaining about is being fixed, like with archaeology and agility. That'd be sick. Because I think that's something that Jagex old school team has done amazingly, is they've been redoing a lot of mid-game content and a little bit of early content. And that has, I think, been a fantastic addition to the game, even as someone who's way past that content and doesn't really get to interact with it because I don't need to. It's still a fantastic addition to the game, like just objectively. So maybe they're going to do that with the, I guess maybe it's like a cleanup, they call it. Old school, they call it the cleanup or whatever. Summer cleanup, I guess. In this case, it might be winter cleanup. Let's stop just in case we need some of these. So that'd be sick to see if they do a bunch of that stuff.
This is my very latest discovery. Would you like me to share it with you? As you increase your skill in divination, you'll find yourself moving on to more complex wisps. It just so happens I've discovered something useful for that very situation. With a large amount of divine energy of the correct tier, you will be able to make a boon. This means you will be more effective when converting memories of the tier for which your boon was made, giving you a greater return. Why don't you give it a go?
Alright, so that is what we were doing. We've flickering energy, pale energy, 100. Okay, I'm glad we did with this. Cool. Do we use this? Is this what the empower thing is? You feel the effects of boon of flickering energy. You will now permanently receive bonus energy and experiences when converting flickering memories. Permanently. God damn. Oh, wait. Let's talk to him again because we did it.
Your knowledge of divination currently equals my own. Orla tells me she's discovered something new, though. Perhaps.
Orla.
A new discovery has been made. Would you like me to show
please.
you? My latest discovery is rather exciting, although unfortunately we haven't been able to observe it in the wisps here. In the other colonies, you will occasionally see an enriched wisp, or be particularly successful when harvesting a normal wisp, resulting in you gathering an enriched memory. Well, why don't you see if you can find one?
Okay, I like the sound of that. Where's level 10? Wait, this is the ideal colony for your level. Requires 10. This can be found north of Falador near the Guthix Memorial Statue. I do find some of the maps maybe a little inconsistent, like what their purpose is. Wait, this is a pale memory. Do I use these up first? Probably, right? I'll keep these because I think I actually use those for like this shit. And they may be tier based, like maybe you can't use the higher tier ones to make this bubble. And the truck's going past. Okay. Now we go to Falador. This should take us right there, because Falador Lodestone in the north. I find the Lodestone like positioning really interesting. I need to obviously unlock more teleports to really grasp the spread of where everything is, but I feel like some of these lodestones, considering they're like free to use right from the start, they're pretty well positioned. So I think that's cool. Divination over there. Hello, Energy Rift. Oh, flickering! Right off. Oh, wait, no, they're all flickering. Never mind. This one looks like it's actually flickering. No, it doesn't. Flickering wisp, flickering spring, yes. Okay, so we've got to keep an eye out for if something does anything special. Gather an enriched memory. I need to be level 13 to continue there. Okay, we've got an enriched memory. I don't know what the fuck that does, but we're going to make sure we don't accidentally use it in case we need it for to progress the tutorial. Actually, I wonder if because archaeology has this. Maybe I've messed this up a little. Maybe I should have done this. Find more. You're currently not tracking. Yeah, I feel like this needs to be improved a little. Like, do I just choose archaeology or bossing and like that's it? Like that, it's done. I haven't done any of these really. Or more, like, yeah, you can go to this, I guess. Maybe this is it. But then I can like click this and it's still fuck all paths. Like, this is just confusing to me, to be honest. Book of Paths. What the fuck is this? Next, Book of Paths. Oh, select the path. Why have I only got like a couple options? Select Berthorpe Path. Following a path can break up objectives into smaller ones. Okay. Wait. Show achievements and paths you have completed. No. Yeah, I don't get it. It doesn't make much sense to me. Maybe I'm just stupid, but like what's happening right now with divination, where it's like getting me to do something. Like there is definitely things to tweak on it, but like getting me to do something, explain it to me, get me to interact with it, explain it to me, then go back and then explain it to me, interact with it. That kind of process over and over, I think is a lot better. Which I think that activity tracking needs to do more of and more clearly if it's going to exist. Or you need to do these tutorial people more like this. Because what is it? It's like reinforced learning where you do it and then you learn from it. Or like you get taught it and then you do the practical of it. And I feel like with this, I got more like clear goals. Like, okay, I gotta get to 13, right? Like, okay, I've been explained how to do this. I do it. I go back. Okay, now I need to hit the level on my own. That's not too far away. You're able to reach it very soon, but you have to go and do it on your own for a little bit. So you're just kind of doing like a little reinforced learning thing. Then you can come back and you take on the next step where it's like a little tutorial. Then you go and do it on your own again. And it's like these mini little goals in between. Like now I have to get to 13 is my goal. Like I think this is well done. Maybe archaeology, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just rambling. The memories. I suppose it also breaks things up a bit as well, like, because like when you think about it with the archaeology, like how long was I sitting there getting that second one? I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over for quite a while to get that second artifact. Whereas this, you know, I'm doing things more incrementally and there's like, it's varied up as I go. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Like even the fact that because like you do that tutorial and then it changes your location at level 5, which could be good. That's not necessarily good or bad. I don't know. It's just a weird contrast, I guess. But I do like this better. Divine herb. Ooh, I like the sound of that. Actually, I need to do a herb run soon. Actually, I mean, I should have done it already, but maybe we'll do it after this level 13. Alrighty. Oops. Where's the music? And we're almost there. These almost look like eyes, which I think is actually pretty cool. Cool. Alright. Actually, let's do this. Let's just continue this because I'm not going to have inventory space. Well, I'll just have a messy inventory for farming. And it's not that big of a deal. What is it going to try and make us make a divine oak tree? Ooh, maybe it's going to teach me transmutation. 3 logs. Alright, I can just get them if I need to. We can just chop them on the spot. I think that's really cool though, transmutation. Upgrading lower resources to higher ones. Right.
You've covered everything I know. Faizan has discovered something.
Hey, didn't you tell me to...
I have made one further discovery. Would you like me to
Yes,
I have
please.
discovered you can use divine energy to change one item into another.
Okay, yeah.
Just take the correct tier and amount of divine energy, along with a secondary ingredient, and you are able to produce a higher quality.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Alright, so it's going to get us to do the logs, right? Divine rock. Iron ore. Oh, it's a divine iron rock. Okay, that's... Oh, wait, no, that's not transmuting, that's why. Okay, let's just chop down 3 logs. Oh, they gave me XP without actually getting a log. Interesting. And again. Oh, wait, no, I bet it's this stupid thing, isn't it? You son of a... Might as well use it up, I guess. I wonder what these go up to. Ah, there we go. That's that done. Now give me the logs. Give me the logs. Give me the logs. I think that's what Biggie said. Alright, one more. Okay. Whee! Congratulations, you've completed all divination achievements. Ooh, a reward! A reward!
First, I'd like to give you a reward for learning the basics of divination. You've shown real dedication. Use them wisely.
Oh, shit. Can you tell me about that? Hey. He is not wearing a cape, homie.
Beautiful, isn't it? We're reserving it for true masters of divination, who may wear it as a sign of their accomplishment.
Oh, that cape. Interesting. What are the other people here for?
Welcome. Are you a volunteer? If so...
You guys are just
If
other
you're looking
trainees,
to
I
help-
guess.
No. This isn't right. I'm trying to train my divination, but I'm just not getting it right.
Okay. I am very curious about what was that thing, the herb patch? 12, you may only create one divine location. Oh, okay. 10 clean qualms. How much do I get from it? I don't think I have 10 at the moment. I mean, I might. Let's go have a look. Kind of curious. Need to use these things up anyway. Bank. Guam. I have 1, and I can buy 1. Alright, that's fine. Alright, let's go back. We'll spend these. We'll do a farm run, I guess. I think that's all there really is. Yeah, maybe we just make today a short stream. What? Why am I doing that? What am I... What? What was going through my brain then? Someone else took over. Oh, we didn't end up using this, actually. It was interesting. Can I make this bigger? No, why can't I make this bigger? You can make other minions bigger. It's kind of weird, because then you got to scroll down constantly to see the thing. Divine Oak Tree. Important Restoration. Oh, yeah, what's this one? Oh, no, that's Restoration as well. Wait, what? Attuned. Okay. Where's the... Does it... Oh, Boon? Oh, no, that's the Bright Energy. No. That's not what we want. We want the Boon. Where's the thing that... This? Sign of Water. How many does this one do? 10. Alright, let's go to the... What? The Ancestral Energy? Is this the last one? No. Alright, here we go. 50 items. Okay. Dragonstone Necklace. Okay, that's cool. Did you just get like a full inventory of these? What? So like 28 times 50 is what? 1,000... What, 1,400? Before you ever have to move? Oh, that's kind of cool. On death, revives you 25% of your maximum life points. Does not work. And I wonder if that also works for like hardcores. I mean, it is 99 div. Alright, cool. Let's do our farm run. Oh wait, why did I not? No. Get rid of that last thing. There we go. Alright, check that box off. Alright, let's go farm run. I'm not sure if how much I will invest in doing divination. Maybe I'll have to look at it more, because it does seem like it probably has like a good amount of potential. I didn't actually mind doing it. What are we doing? 2. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, too many. You know what? Maybe I actually end the stream here. Basically the 2-hour mark anyway. Because I'm not really going to do anything too interesting today. I'm going to do some dungeoneering later when Jack hops on as well. I'll probably record that for tomorrow because I've got stuff happening tomorrow that I've got to do. I don't know if I'll stream tomorrow or not. But I guess we shall see. Outside of that, I'm probably just going to go back to thieving. And trying not to die in this heat. The usual. So, as always, everyone, have fun.